of things. Who is already involved with our Venture Devils program? Aiken, you might be the only one. Okay. So our Venture Devils program is a resource for you if you feel like you have an interest in entrepreneurship, or if you don't, that's okay. If you have an interest in developing an idea or concept that is novel, that you feel like there is value in the world for it, whether it's capital or human-centered design, it's a social idea, that's fantastic. We have money. We have industry mentors, people that are experts in their fields and in things related to entrepreneurship available to you, and you can get course credit for signing up for our Venture Devils program. I will leave a stack of these flyers over on our check-in desk over there so that at the end of the night, if you have any more interest in exploring what that means for you, just go ahead and visit the website. There'll be tons of information on there for you. The most recent upcoming deadline is March 5th, but we have a rolling deadline every 7.5 weeks once a new session starts during the semester that you can apply. Essentially, it's an application. We look at what idea you're working on, and then we match a mentor based on what our faculty feels like is best for you to advance that idea. You don't have to be an expert in the business side. You don't have to be an expert on the engineering or technology side. Whatever you're thinking of, if you think there's value for it, we will absolutely support you and provide you with the resources necessary to succeed. Sort of. I mean, I don't know what success means. You might have a better idea of that. Does it mean you become a millionaire and you get to sell your company and never work again? I don't know. Maybe. If you help, 1,000 females in Lithuania go to school because you've developed some way for them to study in the dark. Okay, that sounds strange, but it's true, that happens. We have our Devils Invent series. Has anyone participated in Devils Invents? Samira, whoop, whoop. Did you place at our last one? Epics Fast Track. Does anyone know about Epics? Yeah? Do I have some Epics students in here? Okay, perfect. Sorry, I don't know you by name. I'm Brittany Martin, by the way. So I run the speaker series. I also coordinate for EPICS program, engineering projects, and community service, for which you do not have to be an engineering student. None of these opportunities are just for engineering students. So if you're not an engineering student, is anyone not an engineering student? I should probably ask that. Business students, design students, all engineering? Okay, cool. Engineers are typically the foundation of many successful startups. However, Dustin, where am I at for time? So I don't segue at the wrong time. This is all about timing. I'm really bad at it. But however, Carine here tonight will share with you some very, very valuable tips and tricks that particularly engineers will benefit from, because you're not getting the business courses or information on marketing or the business strategy or going to market or how to create a successful business, not just a successful product. Because we know that you're smart enough and you're tech savvy enough and you're probably going to come up with a super innovative idea that, yes, a lot of people may want or need, but you need some other tools in your skill set to bring that idea to life and make it pretty and make it marketable and make it wanted. Actually, not just wanted, but you want people to think that they need your idea, concept, product, app, whatever it is, right? So Carine is here today to talk to you a little bit about that side of things. So if you will all welcome Carine to the Generator Labs.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity of being here. And yes, engineer rock. So I'm happy that you're all engineers. A little bit about my background. I'm also engineer by education, biomed. So I study genetic modifications. I never worked one day in that field. I did want to save the world, but way too many challenges with authority to become a professional student and go through the PhD and the research that I wanted to do. So I actually fell right off into business. Just opportunity presented themselves and an idea leading to another one. I was able to create several businesses that I exited, and eventually I got recruited by a private equity firm that was based in London, and they were sending me wherever in the world. They were acquiring companies, and my job was to grow those companies to the point where they will sell them or the permanent team will take over. So I had one criteria the ocean needed to be turquoise and the sand super white. So I ended up living in a lot of fabulous countries, and eventually got here 15 years ago. And now I specifically and exclusively focus on entrepreneurship, supporting entrepreneurs from startup to more established companies. I really specialize in the commercialization of technology. So I'm also a reviewer for the National Science Foundation and reviewing their grant application. Any of you guys have heard about the National Science Foundation and their SBIR, STTR grant? So definitely when you are developing some innovative technology, it's a great way to get support and get financial aid to be able to continue your science. So how many of you are currently brewing an idea in your head about something you may want to pursue and put out there? I see a little smile. I'm sure you have something. No, nothing? So you mentioned you were in the Venture Devil program? Yes? Can you tell us a little bit maybe before we get started so everybody know what you are doing? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you don't mind, share with us.
Hello, my name is Ken Tong. I'm a student here, senior. I joined Venture Devil 3 years ago. Our program is an agriculture company that produces organic pesticide. I come from a country where getting chemical pesticide is very expensive for local farmers. So we are trying to innovate. We are trying to produce local organic pesticide so that local farmers can actually, do by themselves, so that they cannot pay a lot of money to buy chemical pesticide. We have prototyped the product for the last 2 years, and we are now trying to roll it out so that local farmers can access it. Thanks.
Awesome, that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing with us. So one of the characteristics of engineer is typically we love to build stuff, right? Wouldn't it be cool if the thing with the thing could do the thing? So, and that's typically how the ideas start, right? You either have a skill set or a passion for something and you try it out, the science, to see if it will pay out, or you have a personal experience and you couldn't find a solution. You said, hey, I'm gonna fix that problem, right? So really the first tip I want to convey, and specifically for us engineers, is do not obsess over your product. It's very difficult to get out of our own way, right? Because you have your idea, you have your product that you're designing, whether it's a product or a service, right? It doesn't matter. But that will bring you to a very linear path. So think just about this fact. We have 7.5 billion people on the planet, right? So, and your idea is not currently in the market. So what is the most rational explanation? No one thought about it. Out of the 7.5 billion people, not one single person thought of doing what you were doing. Or maybe there's more barrier to entry. It's a little bit more difficult either to mature the technology or get to market. So what do you think is the most rational explanation? The second one? Okay, so Occam's razor principle. So that's a very valuable tip in business. The less assumptions we make, the better off we are. So business are not built around product or services. They are currently actually built around ideas. So when you have an idea for a product, dig a little deeper. Don't just stay on the surface, oh, this is a product, it's going to be a great product. But try to think a little deeper and what's the idea behind it? What is your passion about it? So I'm going to go back to you because you're the only one so far that have shared that have a product. What is the idea you had beyond just creating those organic pesticides?
To make a difference.
To make a difference. So do you feel that For now, your idea was about organic pesticides, but maybe tomorrow, along that same line, to make a difference in your country or other country, you will come up with new ideas. So have you heard about Simon Sinek? So he has a great talk that I will encourage you to look up, a TED Talk. I think the title is How Great Leaders Inspire Action. And he articulates that idea that business are built around ideas, and people do not buy the product, they buy not what you do, but they will buy why you do it. So he gives the example about Apple. So Apple is arguably one of the most successful and profitable consumer goods company in the past decades. And you don't hear Apple, they've never said, hey, we do great computer, do you want to buy one? Do you find that quite inspiring? That's not how they go about it. We want to change the status quo. And we change the status quo by designing beautiful products that are user-friendly and very simple to use. By the way, we make computer. Want to buy one? It's a little more enticing, right? So dig deeper and really find that center idea that you can build your business around. That will lead to two things. The first one, it will help you empathize with the market and the people you want to buy for, or you want to sell to. Because at the end of the day, if you have to give me a definition of business, what would you say business is? Yeah. You have something? Someone want to share? Very good. So it's people making products or services and that sell them to people who actually want to buy them. So at the end of the day, the beginning of the cycle is people, the middle is people, and at the end is people. So when you have a profound idea that everybody can rally upon, that's actually the basis of a great brand. So every venture needs a vision more than just a product. Does that make sense to you? Very good. The other aspect of it is, again, don't obsess over your product. Depending what your innovation and your technology is about, you may have a great goal, but it might not be an immediate goal. So I'm going to give you an example. I worked recently with a young startup, engineers, advanced materials, and they had invented a better way to anti-icing for aircraft that was 50x more efficient than what's currently on the market. So if you think about it, the downtime of an aircraft, the amount of money that it costs, it's definitely something very needed on the market. However, to get that to commercialization, it requires to get all the approval from the OEM, the manufacturers, so the Boeing and the Airbus and everybody like that. So they were not very aware of the industry. They were trying to get after airline. But the cycle to get this approved was 3 years. What do you do for 3 years? How do you keep going? How do you simply eat every day, right? So if you get down past beyond the product and you understand the core value of your technology, now you can find new applications. So working with them, just simply brainstorming. Their product was meant to prevent the ice from forming, right? No snow aggregation, no ice aggregation. Well, guess what? Ski manufacturers have been looking for that product for many years. So it was just a matter of getting their lab to test the product, making sure that it was meeting their specification, and there you go, off to the races. It enables the company, you can get something onto the market. It might not be your ideal product to start with, but it enables you to prove your technology, say, hey, my technology is working, look at the result I'm having, even though it's in other circumstances. And then you can continue to work, get revenue, because at the end of the day, you need to sell something, right? And get to revenue and continue working on your bigger goal and what you were striving to do in the first place. That makes sense? So we had don't obsess over your product, don't obsess over your product. Guess what the third tip will be? Don't obsess over your product. If you notice, there's a lot of great product on the market every single day. I don't know if you look at Product Hunt, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, you can see all those crowdfunding platform where a lot of product are launched, right? So there's a lot of very innovative product, but at the same time, if you look around, we also live in a world where we are in the Me Too business. Well, like Uber right? We keep doing just little incremental work. We take a product, oh, I can do it a little better. There you go, 10% better. No, you're a brilliant mind. Don't aim at the Me Too. Really go for it, and again, dig deeper and be innovative. Do something radical, think differently. There's a lot of place for that in the market. So, and I asked the question at the first place and nobody wanted to share anything, but anyone has just a little idea, something that they were interested in looking at? Not yet? Yes? Let me give you a mic.
So nowadays, when people obsessed with like to be in a shape or something like that, so they go to gym. But fat people, if they get some real idea, like if you do these exercises for 3 months, you will definitely get results that might help them mentally. So I'm planning to build a suit or something like that, which will define that if he is fat over here, then definitely this exercise, these many times, these many days, will reduce your fat to these many percentage. So if I can develop something like that, then that might help fat people.
Thank you for sharing. Anyone else? Come on, guys. I know you have ideas, tons of ideas every single day. No? Okay. So the idea that you shared, have you had a chance to talk with maybe fellow students or other people that goes to the gym? What was the feedback that you got? Oh, I'm sorry.
I asked about that idea to one of my fellow who goes to gym every day, and he had some positive response about that. And I already had a talk with there was an entrepreneur on this class. So he said it's a good idea. I need to develop some model kind of thing in computer, and then I need to talk about it to someone who can understand these and can help me develop it. So I'm planning on that.
Okay. Have you had a chance to ask anyone if they would pay for that? Not yet? Okay. So that's, again, one of the aspects of focusing on the product, because, again, either it's one of our skill set or we have experienced something we want to solve, but is really the problem out there? Are people, what is the size of the problem we are trying to solve? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about business, right? So a business, you need to make revenue, you need to be sustainable. So what is the size of the market you're going after? Go out there. Whenever you have an idea, you wanted to share something? Yes, please come.
Yes. Oh God, I don't think I'm gonna use it. So you need to use it for the online. Oh, okay. Sorry.
Maybe you just put it not so close.
Yeah, I have a very loud voice. So mine's a very inkling of an idea that I'm working on. I'm a master's student. It's my first semester, and I'd like to work on solid-state transformers for microgrids. So right now, distributed generation, like solar arrays, when you put them on individual households, in the future, there's an idea where there'll be a smaller grid within households instead of among large communities. And they've had a lot of ideas on that. And next week, I'm actually going to a boot camp to learn how to create microgrids. But my idea is it's kind of used at a utility scale, but I want to create a program and a device, well, part of a smart meter that measures the energy leaving the household within the microgrid, and then creating a sort of app that lets you sell the energy from your own household within your neighbor, within your group of like community, for a cheaper rate than you sell to the utility, so that you can kind of buy the renewable energy credits from within your own neighborhood, and then possibly sell those to a higher rate to the utility. It's very like inkling of an idea, and I'm going to be asking them next week more questions on people who've done this. And yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. But that's kind of an idea of sorts that I will be working on through grad school.
Okay. So you haven't had a chance again to, because you mentioned it's just the start of an idea, so you haven't had a chance to look around and ask around. So what do you guys think about that problem? Do you feel that, based on what you know, is that you think something that is a large-scale problem? Yes? Okay.
So if you're talking about selling credits back to the utility company, it doesn't seem like Arizona's the place for that. I mean, the housing, yes, but just based on what I hear my aunt complaining about during the summer with her utility bill, excuse me, just in the month of August, her utility bill was like $600 or $700, and that was just for electricity. And it's a 2-story house, maybe 4,000 square feet. And that doesn't include anything else. And from what I understand, the part of Maricopa County where she lives, she wouldn't have the opportunity to sell anything back, which is why they never got the solar panels. I think it's an awesome idea. Where I live, something like that is already in place. And people gobble stuff up like that. Anything to save money and give back to a cleaner source. I think it's a fantastic idea, and I don't see anything but positive results coming from that.
Very good. So she provided you with some important feedback right there. There's an area, Maricopa, where you can do it. So maybe it's a regulation, maybe who knows what is the problem. Where she lives, it actually exists. So don't hesitate to ask and talk. Not only to your friend and your family, because if you ask mom, she will say, yes, you're the best, of course. But ask not to get a I think. She was very specific and methodical in her answer. She had data, right? She said, my aunt, where my aunt lived, it was not, oh, I think you can, you cannot. Again, same to the point that we were doing earlier, the less assumption you're going to make, the better off you are. You're going to find the better path to do that. So always, you start with assumptions, because that's how it is, right? An idea, you assume certain things, you want to do something, and peel that back as much as you can. Ask, research, don't spend, okay, so there was a change in the past 10 years, decade maybe. How many of you have heard about the lean startup methodology? So before your age, right, the approved method to start a business was to write a business plan, right? So the business plan was like a big, thick thing like that. You were spending hours and hours in researching everything and every possibility to try to forecast as much as you can. The results were 9 out of 10 startups were failing. To this day, That's more or less still the same result. 9 out of 10 fails. There's still a little improvement. And a few years back, there's Eric, I can't remember his last name, that wrote a book called The Lean Startup Methodology, talking about, okay, we cannot foresee the future anyway, so let's try to get as much feedback as we can from our consumer, as opposed to going solely on our perspective and the research. Let's have an idea, validate, go out there and do, again, focused and methodical feedback, discovery of our customers, trying to validate that, and let's try to put a product out there right away. An MVP product, right? You have heard about MVP, the minimum viable product. So that will be a product that is not necessary, doesn't have all the features and the final look or anything that you want to have, but just enough to give the essence of what you are trying to do. And go out there and get the feedback so you can change right away. That make sense? So I think we can move on from the don't obsess over your product. You get the picture, right? Try to really, again, get a broader perspective, dig deeper into the why you want to do that, and validate as many assumptions as you can from industry players. Google, it's pretty great at finding stuff as well. Google Scholar, I have to say, is one of my favorite. You find a lot of information, more so in the technical space, because how can you be aware of everything out there? So if you're something very technical, that will give you the ability to find out, okay, is that something out there? You always find a paper on it's coming from a university, there's a research paper, something to give you an indication of what's going on. So typically you start with an innovative idea, right? To start to create something new. Oh, yes. Yes, microphone.
I know this is a bit of a broad question, but generally once someone has an idea, and let's say the person is spending time on research, how long should they be researching on before they should be like, okay, you know what, this is not going to make sense? Because sometimes you could be spending like 3 months or a year or more, and then, you know, generally what's the baseline to be like, okay, you know what, this is not the right way to go?
So we're talking about the business side of the research, not the science. Because the technology, I mean, that depends on what you're trying to tackle, right? Some technology, science are more evolved, more mature than others, so that will require. On the business side, okay, think about what will have a statistical value for you. If we said we want to sell something, what do you feel will be the number of strangers you need to talk to get a feel just on the customer discovery side? Being an engineer, I'm sure you can give me a number. How many people you feel you need to talk to?
100?
That's a perfect number. That's a good number. 100, it's a good number. So now, how are you going to go about it? Definitely you can, because the 100 people you need to talk to are the one you want to sell to. So maybe if they are in your immediate network and environment, then it's pretty easy, right? If it was something for student, you have 1,000, you can do that. If it's not student, then you need to keep keeping creative, right? Maybe you can use Facebook. Maybe you can look for a group. I don't know, let's say you want to sell to aeronautical engineers. They have a Facebook group. They have a publication, right? You can post something. You can ask for feedback. It's pretty easy to get creative and get answer. And 100, again, if we start using the outreach of the social media or things like that, it's pretty easy. Does that answer your question? Very good. So let's move on now to the other aspect of the business. And innovation needs to stay at the core of your business. If you think about, there's a lot more than just the product or the service to create a company, right? You have to think about, we talked about the vision, right? So the right product, the right market, but now we get into and the business model and the branding and the marketing and all the business management systems. Because at the end of the day, I know we have now this culture of entrepreneurship and I am a born entrepreneur. But at the end of the day, entrepreneurship and business, it's a process. So it's a fine balance between keeping the innovation and the process. So you don't want to put your innovation in the box for the sake of the process, but you need both of them. And if you think about it, if you look at a lot of the companies, large companies we have now, they have not invented anything new as far as product or whatever. It was all in the business model. So if you think, for example, Uber, I mean, transportation, it's your people, you know, a driver, a car, you put someone in there and you transport them from point A to point B. Uber, Lyft, they have not invented a product. They have invented a different business model. The same for Airbnb, the same for Netflix, right? YouTube. So you need to keep, and it might require, again, a team. You may seek that outside of yourself, and we have the luxury here to have, again, the business school and reach out and maybe look for other students or someone else in your network that will have that type of skill set, because creating a business will require more than just the product. You're gonna have to think about the business model and keep being innovative in that respect. Does that make sense? Once you do something great, prepare to be copied. And if you believe that you cannot survive being copied by somebody else, don't even start. Think about something else. Yes? The innovation is always, I keep saying innovation, but it's really at the core, because when you start, you have a great idea, right? It might not be patentable, or you cannot maybe secure IP. What are you going to do if there's the famous 800-pound gorilla that said, oh, that was a great idea. They have more money, more resource, they just want to go and do it. However, if you had centered your creation, your company around the idea and keeping innovation at the core, guess what? Now you're going to be becoming attractive to them, because they cannot move as fast as you can, right? Typically, when we start a company, we are a little more agile than those bigger corporations. So maybe they will acquire you. We have a lot of success stories that way. And if you remember, I don't know, do you guys remember BlackBerry? So I'm a happy corporate dropout, and that was the first phone that we got. We're calling that the Crackberry. That was the first phone. I mean, we had emails, we had everything outside of our cubicle or our offices. That was like magic. Where's BlackBerry today? They're completely gone. They forgot about that innovation portion. They were so sure about their product. There's a book, I think it's called How the Mighty Have Fallen, or something like that, and it's the story of BlackBerry. They were so certain about their position. I think they had 20% of the market share as far as the smartphone, which is, if you think of the millions and millions of devices, it's a pretty good size. And they saw Apple coming. And they predicted everything that will happen. They said, no, they will crash the network. And that's what happened when the first iPhone was released. It totally crashed the AT&T network. They said, well, the battery, the design is flawed. The battery will never last. Yeah, the battery was not even lasting a day. People didn't care. It was the new, shiny, trendy object. We all wanted the iPhone. So did you change your BlackBerry for an iPhone at the time? You meant, yeah.
Yeah, I was required. I loved the Crackberry, but somebody came to me in my IT department and said, you've got to change it to this now. I was like, no. We're not carrying that anymore. So,
Right. And I think it's at the 1951 location, the Sky Song, the E&I Sky Song Center. There's a co-working space, 1951, and they have a wall with a lot of great quotes. And I think there's the the CEO of BlackBerry quote is there saying, yeah, Apple, that's never going to happen. So it's an advantage. It's not because innovation is always an advantage. It's not because a company is established and again, they have all those resources. They become big machine and innovation tend to slip away. So always keep that at the center. There's another one. Do you remember? Oh, well, you all know Wikipedia, right? Do you know who was before them? The books, okay. In between the books, that's a good answer. In between the books and Wikipedia. Very good, Encarta. So that was a company, a product from Microsoft. It was the exact same concept, but it was Microsoft people, employees, that were putting out the content, right? Innovation came along, Wikipedia, they said, that business model is really not good. There's no margin, a lot of labor. What did they do? They crowdsourced the content. That's for free. And where is Encarta now? Gone. So always look at, again, innovation. Bring people to your team that will have a different skill set than yours, but still that mentality of innovation. Be scrappy. I know, again, we are in fantasy land. I have an idea. I need millions of dollars. Okay, so imagine that. I don't know you. I'm walking off the street and I said, hey, I have a fantastic idea. I'm going to do that, that, and that. I need $10,000. It's not a lot, right? What will it require for you to be comfortable and give me $10,000? A contract?
For me to be okay with this deal, I would need a written contract to say that no matter how successful the product is, I will still be promised money back with interest.
Okay, so I like that. I think I'm going to come tomorrow with an idea, put a nice contract, and I'm going to ask you for $10,000. They will require a little bit more than that. So I know it's commonly accepted principle that we have an idea, we need money right away. So the market has changed a lot. Before when you have an idea, you go to your family, friends, and fools, right, to get a little money to put your MVP together. So we are very lucky, like Brittany was saying, the E&I program, the Venture Devil, they do have funds available so you can start working on your startup, right? And then we were going to the angel investors, so high net worth individual that wanted to support entrepreneurship and were investing. Contract, a promise of course, payment and interest. And then as you go along, you were going to higher source, the VC, et cetera, et cetera. Since 2008, where we had that nice economy crack, the market has changed. At the time, everybody thought, oh, there's no more money for investment. That's not what happened. Investment is like if you were to invest in the market, right, in a share of Apple, Amazon, whatever. You invest to the point where you're satisfied with your return. You expect an interest, you get it, you change, and you divest and invest in something else. It's the same for investors. They are not with you for life, right? So in 2008, when the market crashed, that next level of funding that you were expecting to get once your investors were getting out, the banks, that was not available because all the funds from the bank were not available whatsoever. So the investor had to either lose their initial investment or put more money in here. So that has triggered a change in the financial market. Investors, I'm talking about institutional investors, so those VC, they go now to seed, even pre-seed, so early stage ideas, right, to fund early stage startup. But they don't want to be in the same position in 2008. So they will have a tendency to look to make a commitment to you to fund whatever you will need to get to that big level of revenue, et cetera, et cetera. That has changed the condition now, as opposed to a few years back where we have all those Silicon Valley, oh, I have a .com idea, sure, here's $100 million, I have X amount of users. Now they are looking at traction. They are looking at, show me that the market wants you what you have. And there's no better proof of concept that someone gave you a check. So learn to be scrappy. How can you get traction? It doesn't mean huge level of revenue, but how can you get your product out there? How can you get someone to pay for it already? That will get a way long. Now you have investors attracted to you. Because I promise you, if you hear, it's not a happy ending story, right? We hear a lot of companies, they're looking for funding, and they're not really being successful at it. So what happened is your pocket starts to, you know, being empty, and you just abandon your idea because you don't have the initial runway. So try to think the other way around. What can you do to get some results, whatever level they are, to keep going? Does that make sense? Yes? Another tip I have is you have to know yourself. The company will, any company, grow as far as their management, their leadership can grow. And very often, we have a tendency, it's your baby, right? You just invented something, it's your baby, so there's nothing wrong with seeing yourself, well, I want to be the CEO of, but you have to think about it. Okay, what do I really want to do? I'm an engineer, what I like is building stuff. Do I want to spend my time in boardroom and talking to bankers and attorneys, because that's what the role of a CEO of a large company is? Or maybe, you know what, I love to stay in my lab. Yes, I want to have a company that can, you know, keep funding my innovation. I can keep innovating, keep putting out there. So try to think of what is it that you are passionate about and what you do, and what capacity do you have. As you grow, as you evolve, you have to learn your own capacity. I think that I read, there's the Kaufman Foundation that does a lot of report about entrepreneurship and the success of startup. And I think half of the startup fail because of their founders' hubris, right? I know everything, I can do everything. And that typically lead the startup not to have enough, to have too many skill set gap and talent gap. And by yourself, it's not easy to innovate constantly or to excel at every single thing. So definitely know yourself. Empathize. To go back to the initial idea that business is by people, for people, you have to be able to put yourself in other people's shoes, your customers' shoes, your employees' shoes. So how do you think we can develop empathy? Any idea? Does that mean anything to you in the first place? Because I know, you know, when you're the technical, it's a little more different. It's not very people-oriented, right? Or do you feel you have enough experience sharing with other people to lead that?
Take a shot at it.
Yeah.
So you're saying as a manager or entrepreneur in a business, how do we develop empathy? Well, the way I would, if I was owning a company, I would just take a step back for a day or a few days and go into different departments in my business, or to go to different sections that I don't usually see or hear from, and then just kind of sit in the back and see how they go about their usual day, and then maybe adjust some ideas I had about my company or what I thought of different departments. And maybe that's how I would actually put myself in their shoes for a day. Probably what I would do.
Very good. Anyone else? A different opinion?
If the owner of the company or the boss walked in and just was hanging around his or her employees, I could tell you they wouldn't like it, because they'll be looking at you all the time. You make them feel very, very uncomfortable. Develop your leadership skills. Make sure that when you are signing a contract, you take in consideration that the people that are working for you have families. They have to feed their kids. They want nice houses and cars, everything that you have and are working for. But they need direction and leadership. So pick out people you respect. How are they successful? And then hone those skills. And then lead. And the people that work for you will follow.
Thank you. That was a great yes, ma'am.
I had a question for you. Is it necessary to have empathy? And like, do you need to have empathy in order to be successful?
Yes, I have a definite yes for that. So personal, I can share. I have learned that the hard way. So again, engineer, I was not very much about people. Even though now I can speak in public, hold a mic, and keep going, I'm an introvert. So I was, again, not attracted to people. My downtime is go away from me. I need to recharge. So not people-oriented right away. Because of my skill set, I was put in a position of leadership, even though I was not given any leadership training and I was not coming from that background, right? And that led to difficult situation. So I'm naturally driven and result-oriented, but without taking in consideration, so to me, and I had the perfect justification for that, because, you know, we are, again, human being, we have a big brain, and we use it sometimes not for our benefit. So my justification was things, people are not perfect, but things can be done perfectly. Imagine that. Meaning there was no room for error in my world. The plan was this, we're going to do that, it's going to be done that way. So 2 consequences. I had to adjust because I had not a great relationship with people because I was expecting too much out of them, the same out of me. I ended up twice in the hospital just because I was running myself completely crazy, not mentally, but physically. Again, no empathy for whatever, just result-oriented. It has to be done. It will be done. I ended up working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. You're not built for that way. So at some point, you crash. So empathy, I would say, all around you. You need to be able to relate. If you cannot relate to people, I promise you that they will not relate to you. And that goes back to, again, you trying to, when you start, you want to build something for them because you're not the consumer, you're not the client, right? You're not building for yourself. So how are you going to build something that they need and will relate to? That's the first one. In order to sell it or even just advance your company, your venture, you're going to have to talk about it. So if you have, I don't know if that happened to you, but in the professional world, we have a lot of meet and greet and networking and hi, my name is blah, 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 what do you do? And sometimes you have people respond, it's gonna take them 20 minutes and you're like, oh, you're trying to be polite, but you can't, So that's because they talk from their perspective. They wanna say everything about their product, and at the end of the day, I don't care, I cannot relate to it. If they were to empathize, they will understand a little bit better and have a better way to communicate. Internally, again, if you have team members, I'm sure you have some exercise within college, within school that are team exercise, or no? Do you have to work in teams sometimes? Yeah. And have you had that experience where, some team members it's much easier to work with and some others it's painful? That's with the same thing, empathy. Because if I'm able to empathize with you, I can be in your shoe as opposed to my own perspective. And personally, again, it's you will have such a different set of expectation and criteria than other people that it will alienate yourself. And if you do like me, well, it will be done, I will take on everything, you're gonna run yourself down. Right.
I agree with having empathy. I just wanted to know if it was necessary. The reason I brought it up is just what was in my news feed this week about Snapchat and how one person made the company lose over $1 billion. And they didn't care. They changed their platform and they just kept it moving. And one person crippled them by $1 billion. I don't know how much Snapchat is worth, but I just found it interesting that they didn't go back to their original platform after that happened. So I believe empathy is important, but it didn't seem like that company seemed to find it important.
We'll see what their investor says. I'm sure we're going to have some news pretty soon.
So, few minutes back, you talked about copying someone might copy your stuff. So I got a question for that. So is it advisable to share your idea to people or is it's a stupid thing to share your ideas to people? Because that's what I did few minutes back.
So I have heard both sides of the story. I've heard, at the end of the day, people are people. Some are I personally believe that the majority of the people are good people, right? There might be so few opportunistic people in there, but I've heard both sides. At some point, you need to take the risk. So maybe a calculated risk, again, as opposed if you have a great idea and definitely you go all over the place, oh, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. There's a chance that someone may beat you to the punch and do it. But at some point, you're going to need to share to get the feedback. You're going to need to share to build a team. So I would say calculate your risk and share your idea if it's necessary to do. Otherwise, do it. And then let it speak for you, right? That makes sense? Sure. So empathy, leadership, those are definitely qualities that are required. And it's nonstop, it's constant. If you are in business, if you want in entrepreneurship, the entrepreneurial mindset, it's a problem-solving mindset. That means you constantly learn. The day you say, oh, I'm good, I know everything, that's probably when things gonna fall out one way or the other. Any other question?
Wanted to piggyback off what you were saying when you're talking about you're going to your other departments and trying to get information, I guess being more empathetic. And you were saying that as the boss, no one wants to see you around. It's weird that way, but wouldn't it depend on the company? Because it seems like companies like the guy who did, I don't know if he's still CEO of like British Airways, not British, Virgin. And like Elon Musk, like those type of leaders, it seems like if they entered your department, they welcome that kind of feedback. But would it depend on the company?
The point that I was trying to make is a great leader will instinctively motivate their employees. So if the boss walks in and just is kind of hanging around, immediately the employees can think something's wrong. But somebody like an Elon Musk, an innovator, when he walks in, he's not just hanging around. He's got an agenda. He's got someplace to be. So the employees will take a look. That's just the boss. He's here for a reason. So that's the distinction that I was trying to make. If you just walk in and you don't have a reason to be there and you're just kind of hanging around, people will pick up on it really quickly. But somebody like Elon Musk, where he might be making or losing millions of dollars every few minutes, people know he's got an agenda and he's moving forward. So that's the point, the differentiation that I was trying to make. That's all.
So I'd like to know from you guys, what area of the whole entrepreneurship business is the most scary to you? what do you feel is the most difficult or you're the most uncomfortable with?
I guess one of the challenges is with the apps nowadays is how do you decide that should I have this app on a free basis, or how do I monetize it, or will sometimes you know that people may not be willing to pay for it, but like apps like WhatsApp, when they started off, whoever knew that it would become this valuable? I do not know if the developers once thought that this data that I'm collecting will be worth millions of dollars later. But if it's just the data, now every app is collecting some sort of data. So should we be building apps for that we want to get this data, so we just have this app that will collect the data, or should the app be more than just the data? Because that's where the value might be if you're not charging for the app.
Okay, so now we're talking about strategy. Because at the end of the day, again, we might not foresee the future, but we're trying to have a strategy in place so we can execute upon it. So the WhatsApp example, that's a great example. If you recall, on the other end, Twitter was like, hey, we're going to have millions of users and it's going to be something to leverage. They have not been profitable forever, right? So strategy, you never know, but as long as you have a plan, you make the decision. That's the decision-making process and the strategy. So you're trying to do a business. At the end of the day, a business, if it's all free forever and there's nothing else, that's a hobby, right? We can have hobby, that's cool. We can be a hub, etc. If we are trying to build a business, there will be something to monetize. So now is the strategy. Do I give it for free now and I do in-app sales? Is there the data? But same than before. Strategy is all based, we make assumptions, how do we validate them? So a good way is to look in the app space. There are so many examples, and we have data on that. We can look and find a pattern maybe. And again, how do we keep innovative? Because at the end of the day, with data, if you're trying to compete with WhatsApp, it might be a little difficult. I mean, you have more barrier. The more you work on your technology, by the way, the more you give a chance to someone else to be on the market first. And when someone else is on the market, it might not be your exact solution, but that means it's another barrier to overcome. Did I answer your question? Kind of? I don't have a secret answer, so that's the engineering side. Give me data, and we're going to talk methodically, and then we can have an answer. I don't know. I have to say, sure, without particulars. Anyone else about what is the most uncomfortable or unknown on the entrepreneurial side of things?
Rejection, and how do you bounce back? Like, if you're constantly talking to people outside of your friends and family that thought this was such a great idea, and when you go out into the real world, and out of those 50 people you talk to, only 2 people are like, you know, and the other 48, it's just like, no, no, no. It's how do you bounce back? And then it kind of goes back to what he was asking earlier is, where do you draw that line in the sand? How do you know, like, 6 months is my limit to working on this, or 18 months, or I've been doing this for 2 years and I've only made X amount of dollars, or I've only, like, I should be further along? Because I think everyone's success, they base off of what they've seen or read from before.
Okay, so I'm going to start by the end. Success. What is your definition of success?
I guess being better than the last person.
Being better than the last person. What does that mean?
So he's talking about WhatsApp. I can't remember what WhatsApp does, but I know there's another app like Foursquare. They went kaput. It was like a check-in, like they knew where you were, and now nobody uses it, and now they're selling that data, and they've done this resurgence for the company. So that's another question, but you basically, you compare yourself to the Joneses or whoever was more successful than, or at the level that you want to be at. So for example, Netflix wanted to be a Blockbuster. Blockbuster was like, yeah, right, we're good. Nobody even knows what Blockbuster is. You ask an 8-year-old, they're like, what are you talking about? So with Netflix, if there's someone out there that's wants to be within that vein, their goal is to be better than Netflix. I don't know what that would be, but that, I don't know, that's would be my measurement.
So what happens if you're not better than the next person? Then what? What does it do to you?
Then I guess you feel unsuccessful and you start looking at, well, how much money did I make?
And then?
If you're not making the money that you want, or at least if you're not making Netflix money, or at least the money you feel you should make to live comfortably, and comfortably can mean a Learjet to someone versus my mortgage being paid. It depends on who you are. So success, I don't know if it's a sliding scale or it depends on who's you're asking.
So do you feel, remember at the beginning we talked about dig a little deeper in the product when you have an idea and look at the why you want to do things. Do you feel that the definition of success you just gave us would relate to the why you would get into the business in the first place? Okay. So that will all depend again on your motivation. Why are you getting into something and why are you about to do it? So if your success is, I want to be better than that one, what happened when you reach that? Let's say. Let's take the other way around. You're not failing, but okay, you've done that. Do you stop there or you keep looking, hey, I want to be better than that one? So I'm just saying that, at some point you will realize that that might not be, this is maybe a result. It might not be the exact motivation. So once you're clear on why you want to do something, so then you have to decide how much you're willing to sacrifice to achieve that. Nothing comes for free, right? I think we've all learned that. So you're going to have to work, you're going to have to spend time, spend resource, and that will give you your limit. So most definitely when you want to get into a business, you have to set your limit. You have to know your numbers. What is my financial runway? So you can be very lean, very scrappy, but you need to eat, you need to have a roof over your head. So you need to have an idea, okay, you know what? I give myself 2 years because that's what I have. Or maybe you said, okay, well, it's going to take me longer because I need to work full-time or do something else and work that part-time. So it's all about how you set it up. And knowing, again, if you don't dedicate 100%, then maybe something else will pop up and you will miss that opportunity. But it's, again, about calculating risk. You can't be, I would not recommend to be foolish and say, oh, all in, let's see what happens, right? You still need to understand. It might be your choice, but you say, you know what, I'm going to do that. 2 years. It doesn't work. Guess what? I'm just going to go find a job. As long as you have a plan of some sort. That makes sense? So, when you get rejection, bless these people. You have 48 people that tell you no. So now you know all the reason why no. Because you need, when you get feedback, you have to ask, specific question to get an indication. It's not just, hey, do you want to buy it? No. Okay, buy. You have to learn, take the opportunity to learn. So if you have 48 people telling you no, you have learned the 48 reason why no. So now you can focus on finding all the other one. There would be a yes. And maybe that will help you readjust. Okay, I thought my client would be, my customers would be these people, but based on the feedback, actually it's this group of people. Let me go there. You will learn. So it's all about the consequences. We are all adults, right? Even young adults, lucky you. But we are all adults. We're making choices. Our I firmly believe that our results are consequences of our actions. So we set them up the way we want. And how we measure success is, again, it's very personal. My definition of success is, I want to make an impact. I want to change the world somehow. So I think there's no that dramatic consequences. I think today the world is way more fluid, so it doesn't work. Guess what? I'm going to find a job and do something else, and I'll start maybe later again. I think it's a fabulous experience anyway. Any other question? Any answers? The wise women always seek knowledge. Do you like that one? No? Nothing else?
I just like to add a point to what she was talking about rejection. I guess it's something even in engineering we face, that a no is not always a negative answer, because having a no, like you mentioned, gives you a better direction on where you should be going. So having rejections is actually a positive result, because having only positive results blinds you not knowing what your weaknesses are, and that's where you may fail. But having people tell you that these are where your flaws are will actually help you make your product more versatile and foolproof. So don't be afraid of rejections. That'll only make you stronger. But yeah, know your limit.
Anytime you look at companies and you read stories about how this person become famous or that person got to where they are, or how they have this many commas in their bank account balance, it's always something crazy, like they went all in, they had no net. And I don't believe those stories, like self-made man, like you can't do it alone. But I will say I just read about Xenofits. I don't know if you've seen them. They're out at Tempe Marina. Their name is on the side of the building. And that's the only company story I've heard. That was pretty bad. They started off, they just had huge expansion, and they grew too fast. The guy who came up with the idea, I did not have a background as the CEO, and he was just opening up locations after locations. And when he got here and he opened the one up in Tempe, there were issues with the staff and drinking on site, because they always had some party, and a lot of interpersonal relationships after hours on site. And so they did an interview with him, and he kept saying he didn't understand why accounting firms were calling him. He's making millions and millions of dollars, and he's like, oh, we have a bookkeeper. He's no longer CEO. And they got someone else. So it just goes to show you that that seemed to be like the most real, I guess, trajectory to at that level of success, I guess, when your name is on the side of a building. I don't know. Or if you're making a difference in the world of, I don't know what they did, insurance of some sort. But I just found that storyline to be interesting, because it had so many levels of how a company can grow and what that meaning is of success.
Yeah, that's a great example. Before I get to you, you're talking about all those fantastic stories. Okay, how many stories do we hear about? We have a Zuckerberg. I mean, you can count them on one hand. Again, 7.5 billion, one hand. Yes, it's the loudest voice. They are very shiny. But again, that's the exception, not the rule, right? You wanted to share something?
Mine is a question. Working in the food industry, we have encountered for the last 2 years that there are a lot of layers that we did not know. where you require approval from the FDA. So in such a situation where you have critical products that are going to make a difference, not only in a particular geography, particular country, but all over the world, how would you make sure that your products are not going to be overshadowed by products that are made by other companies like Monsanto? Because for products such as organic pesticide, for it to be approved by FDA, it has to take about almost 10 years and hundreds of millions of dollars for it to be approved. So how would a company, a young company, innovative company, make it without, getting acquired by companies like Monsanto?
That's a great question. So we're going back with that to the strategy side. So when you are starting a company, you have to decide what do you want to be as a company when you grow up, right? So with a product that way, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of regulation. It's a heavy runway. It's going to take a lot. You have different ways of looking at that. Now, I'm sure that you can protect your recipe, invention, patent, whatever you may have on that, right? Is that something you can do? You can patent the process. Okay, so you have some security there. But now, what is it going to take? So we know about Monsanto. Who's out there on the other side that is more earth-friendly and about, being more organic and environmental friendly? Because it doesn't mean for your innovation to have an impact. It doesn't mean that you have to be the one by yourself to go and take it out there. So in those examples, it makes me think also like medical device or the advanced materials. A good way to advance faster is to co-validate with, so not Monsanto, another brand that is more environmental friendly. There's a way, because you can protect your process, to co-validate with them, to approach those firms, industry partner. Because we mentioned earlier that very often those large companies, they are lacking the innovation. And if you look in the market now, they acquire company, the Intel, the Qualcomm, the Apple, the Google, everybody's acquiring new technology as opposed to have all the innovation on their shoulders. They're acquiring other companies, right? But in the meantime, you can always co-validate, approach an industry partner, because you are protected on your scent, and said, okay, here's what I have, and I promise you that we have done that with medical device company where they are interested in helping you, they will invest in you. So corporate ventures now have changed. Before they were investing in young companies like yours, but they were demanding, a term was that you had to sell to them exclusively. Now, they want so badly to have new technology and new innovation out that they will fund and help you through the process without requiring that. So that's a way of doing that. Another way of thinking of it is, okay, FDA regulation here is atrocious, right? Maybe I can go somewhere else where they still need, but they don't have the same process. So it's, again, all about the creativity. How do you overcome? It's not necessarily always a very linear path. You have to think, we say, outside of the box, but literally, we really have to think differently. How can I overcome that? So seeking industry partner, co-validating with them when you can have some protection so they cannot just steal what you're doing. So that happened a lot. Advanced material, biosciences, there's a lot of that being done. And they help you. You can actually get deals where they will pay for the approval process and all of that. Does that answer your question? I don't have the magic answer, not knowing the facts, but just perspective. So let me ask you this, because we've talked about, what does it take, how to do that a little differently, but do you have any idea of, I have an idea, right? I'm working on that. Where do I start? Is that something you have an idea about? No? Okay. So The first, you have heard about the business canvas? So the business canvas, it's not by any means a business plan or something you can operate a business upon. No, I'm super categoric about that. But it's a one page where you can, it's meant to organize your ideas. So the first place is, okay, I have the idea of that product. So this is what I want to do. Here, what would be my customers, right? I want to sell to these people. In order to do that, well, I need some partnership. Maybe I need industry partner, maybe I need distributors. So if I do that type of product, what will be my main activities? Maybe I build, software, maybe it's hardware. It helps you define all the key components of the business. Once you have that, it's just a visual aid, right? Instead of having everything in your head, you can just put Post-it and it's readily available, the framework. It's readily available online. You Google business canvas model, and there's some that come also with an explanation, what to put in those books. So that helps you go beyond the product. And it doesn't mean, again, don't spend millions of hours and months researching. Just, put your ideas in here. Now the work starts. Go out there and say, okay, get the customer first, right? Because again, it's business, it's not a hobby. At the end of the day, we want to be profitable and generate revenue of some sort. So the first step is go and do customer discovery. Go ask people around if they would be interesting. Look, okay, is there someone else doing that? Because maybe you don't know about, but it exists. So smart meter, I don't know if that was exactly the same. I saw something a year ago out of Estonia, I think. They were doing something like that. So it was IoT related. They had sensors and they were able to do all of that. So look around, search. Is there something out there? And once you have that, like, okay, now you can start working on, yes, there's a market for it. Something very important that you didn't mention, you have to know your industry. Because we were talking about Blockbuster and Netflix, right? You have to know where the trends are going. So Blockbuster totally missed that because they say, yeah, no, we don't have enough, network, people not going to do that. They still want to go and come and pick up their DVD. They completely overlook the fact that, yeah, convenient. Why we have to go somewhere? I can just have it right here. So you have to know about your industry. But that's part of your validation. And again, if you look at that business canvas framework, you can plug all your ideas and start validating and start working on that. Does that make sense? And then you can start working. When you have all of that and be able to validate, now you can start working on your product and get more feedback as you go. What is the best way? Again, maybe your goal is down the road because it's a complex solution, but how can you break it down? The next portion you're going to have to think in at the same time, right? Is how you're going to execute. So now we get into the strategy side. Because like we were talking, okay, FDA, it's going to take me, I don't know how many million of dollars and that many years. What are you going to do in the meantime? So that goes back to the being scrappy and, okay, I had that idea, but the core of the technology, maybe it applies to something else. So now we get into the strategic portion of things, where strategic, again, it's how to make the best decision possible, because the game in there is, what is my next best move? Because you want to maximize your effort. Again, I promise you, nothing ever goes according to plan. It's always going to take more time, and it's always going to cost more money. But it doesn't prevent you from thinking, what is my next best move? Yes? And I think we get that from the engineering side, because when you develop a product or something, you have to think about it, right? You have to put that management in place, that system management in place, so you know, okay, I need to do that first. Here's my requirement, and then I need to do that, and da-da-da. It's the exact same thing. At the end of the day, it's all going to be about the execution. Yes? Too much information? Like, stop talking. Any other questions? So who's ready to start a business now? No? So did you hear about Startup Weekend? You know, it's the same principle than hackathon and things like that, but it's business oriented. So we did that, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, just before Startup Week. And we had, again, students, professionals, some from the technical side, you know, software developers, and some just awesome people, right? It was 54 hours. So you started Friday night, and they have to do all that exercise. The goal is, at the end of the 3 days, the weekend, so it starts Friday night. It's not sleepover. There's no pajamas party or anything. We finish on Sunday afternoon, where they have to pitch in front of judges. So they had to pitch in front of, we had actually angel investors, local angel group. They had to pitch in front of them. So a bunch of people that don't know each other, we start that they pitch ideas. There's a vote, and they form team-based. Okay, that's the idea we like the most. And they have to build something in those times. But it's not about the product. They have to go out there. So they went in the street. We were downtown Phoenix. They were, you know, and asking people. They have to do all that process we talked about, validating all your assumptions, and have some sort of MVP at the end. So that's a pretty interesting, it's a good way of looking at the process because, again, entrepreneurship is a process. You're going to have to put those systems in place and be able to see at your execution. The same way when you build a circuit, a product, you know, from A to Z, what is it going to take in the real world, you know? So think about, at the beginning, you are the CEO, you are the bookkeeper, you are the salesperson. So how are you going to do that? Whatever scale that is, but how are you going to put it out there? Because at the end of the day, no one can sell it better than yourself because you're the one that created it, that invented it. Is that scary, the sales portion? Do you feel that if you were to create something, you won't be able to go out there and, hey, do you want to buy that? Or talk about it? Yeah? So that's where, again, how can we, maybe you team up, maybe you create team, right? You're aware, okay, that's really not something that I'm comfortable with. Well, entrepreneurship is not comfortable, so you're gonna have to push your boundary a little bit. But at the end of the day, maybe you partner. Maybe you meet someone, student, and say, hey, let's do that together. At the end of the day, you're gonna need some support. Maybe not at the beginning, but you're gonna need to surround yourself by a team, by support. Yes?
A question about, you're talking about partnering up with industry, or finding industry partners, right? Again, it's a very broad question, I know, but what would be your suggestion on how to approach industries for partnership? I mean, because these might be big companies, and how do you get your foot in the door, or how do you get noticed?
So the first, it's all about your articulation, right? So we go back to, we have done that homework, we understand exactly what's the value. Industry partner, I see them as the same way that I see investors. It's all, they all invest or partner with you. It's fear and greed, right? It's still about the same thing. The fear of missing on something, so maybe that's the next great innovation or something that they need, they don't have in-house, and the greed, because if they help and they partnered, this will be, they are a business after all, so there will be some type of reward for them. How to go about it? So again, being very clear on your articulation so you can show the potential. Very often, when we are, again, focused too much on the product, we don't show the benefit enough. So it's like, you know, we don't want to know about the labor pain. We want to know about the baby, right? You go and you bring the gift for the baby, right? That's what, so you have to it's storytelling. You have to tell a compelling story that people can relate. Again, as far as where do we find these people, we are very fortunate, again, here, just within the ASU network. there are a lot of industry partners already readily available through those channels. So if you're part of the Venture Devil program, you can see through the mentors, you can find that. And again, you're gonna have to step outside of your comfort zone and knock on doors. So again, here locally, we have, depending the sector of industry, we have quite some big corporation. And the advantage of Arizona is that everybody is readily accessible. It's not difficult to get to the person. So it's the 6 degrees of separation, right? Who do you know? Maybe your professor knows someone. Maybe your mentor knows someone. Look in your network and how you can increase that and knock on doors.
I actually want to piggyback on that for just a second, and this is going to tie back into what you were talking about, a fear of failure. So it was one of our first GenLabs events that's just like this, and I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he owns a line of skincare products and he was talking about how he made money when he was like 19 and he bought a lot of land. I think it was on an intersection somewhere, and he held that for a little while, and then a company came along and paid him $1 million. So he's a millionaire at like 20 years old, 21, really young, right? He blew all the money. He was too young, wasn't smart about his strategy, partied too much. And so he basically failed, right? He went from a millionaire to being broke within like 2 years. So he talks about that experience, and again, you can go back. It's on YouTube. I encourage you to go look. And now, like I said, he's involved in skincare and all this, talks about that. And then he also talks about his recovery from that failure. And he said, you know, I made $1 million. If I did it once, I can do it again. And he just had that drive to keep going. And he is one of the people that participates in the Venture Devils and is one of the, is it the angel funding or seed funding? Either way, he works with us here, and he's one of the mentors. And so, you know, he's basically now like one of the people on Shark Tank, where he goes around and invests in businesses and helps startups. So talking about the 6 degrees of separation, he's available to you in some of our programs. So I just wanted to mention that.
No, thank you. Thank you for adding that, definitely. Any other question?
I was going to add to what they were saying. Another thing is to, like, if you know of a company that you want to approach, or if you have a list of companies, research that company as well. You've done research on your product, you've done, customer research, you know who your audience is. Research the company that you want to partner with or do business with, get in bed with, whatever, however you want to just say it. Find out if they have a program that works with universities. Find out if they have a program where they, forge partnerships in the infant stage. And find out who that person is that you need to talk to. They might have been in an article, and you can see, oh, Karen Green, she's the one that she started out as an admin, and now she's a senior VP over innovation or something. And because I picked up the phone a couple of times and acted like I knew who it was. And I don't know who they're talking about. They'll go, oh, are you trying to get in contact with Bill? I'm like, yes. Is he out of town this week again? Just act like you already know them and you get more out of them than calling up and saying, oh yeah, I don't know. Just, yeah, if I get his voicemail. But, you get a lot more if you research.
What is your name? Okay, if you need a salesperson, you call Candy. She's your gal. She's going to do it for you. How many of you already have a LinkedIn profile? LinkedIn is an excellent way to connect with people because it's a professional network, so there's not the barrier of, okay, what do you want? We know it's professional. It's amazing how you connect with people. So I know that I do that I make a conscious effort to connect with people, but I reach out when they accept, I put a little personalized note, and when they reach out, they connect with me. I always send a little note, and I want to know about them. I want to know my network. So I always said, hey, thank you, nice to meet you electronically. I make a point to know my connection. And I always ask, so I briefly introduce myself professionally, ask them what they specialize in. And I always put my little thing about the 6 degrees of separation because I truly believe in that. And I always ask, how can I help? You never, it's amazing who people know. People respond, and I make connection all over the place without having met, in person. But that's a great way to grow a network also. Yeah, it's better than Snapchat and whatever else. Although you would be surprised. So we are still communicating primarily in email, my generation and above. However, there's more and more, again, if you go younger generation, email is not the way of communicating. You have to learn what is the preferred way of communication. I think there was a rating where below 35, if I recall, there was a rank of all the application we were using. Email was not nowhere to be seen. So you have to learn what's the best way to communicate with the people you're trying to reach. Yeah. It's a wrap. No more questions or some more? Anything else that you didn't cover that you die to learn about? You must know before leaving? It's like, so many things. Awesome. Well, again, yeah, there's a great support here within ASU. So not only to find, other students that will augment your skill set, but again, the business program to get the mentors, and so that's a good way. It's a safe space to get started. You will have that experience, you will see what it looks like, and maybe you decide, well, I'm not sure, I don't want to do that, or yeah, I like it. Maybe that was not my best idea, but how many ideas a day do you have? So that's a great way to start. Well, thank you so much, guys. I appreciated the conversation. I hope you got something out of it. Thank you.